Hey there, ready for another deep dive with us?
Always excited to dive in.
Today we're going to be exploring the book of Ecclesiastes.
Oh, interesting choice.
I know, right? It might seem a little, well, gloomy at first glance.
Yeah, it definitely has that reputation.
But trust me, there's some really profound wisdom and even encouragement hidden beneath the surface.
I'm intrigued. What kind of stuff are we talking about?
Well, Ecclesiastes tackles some of life's biggest questions,
Yeah.
meaning purpose, happiness. It doesn't shy away from the hard stuff.
Yeah, that's what's so fascinating about it. It's honest, it's raw, it's real.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to uncover today. Those hidden gems of wisdom and how they can actually deepen our faith and, well, help us live more fulfilling lives.
Sounds like we have a great deep dive ahead of us.
I think so too. So let's jump right in. How about we start with those famous opening lines? Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit hath a man of all his labor, which he taketh under the sun?
Whoa, yeah, that's heavy stuff right from the start.
It is, isn't it? So let's break it down. What's the deal with all this talk about vanity? What's that all about?
Right, so that word vanity is crucial here. It's actually translated from the Hebrew hevel.
Health.
Yeah, hevel, which means breath or vapor.
Breath or vapor.
Yeah, imagine like a soap bubble. It's beautiful, for a moment, and then poof, it's gone.
Oh, I see. So it's not about, like, being conceited or self-absorbed.
Not at all. It's about the fleeting nature of earthly things,
Oh, okay.
Like, think about that amazing vacation you took, right?
Right.
The memories are priceless, but the tan lines fade, the souvenirs, they gather dust.
Yeah.
That's hevel in action.
Wow, that's a really powerful image.
Yeah.
So Ecclesiastes is urging us to think beyond just those temporary things, right?
Exactly. It's like a call to really examine our priorities,
Yeah.
To consider what truly matters in light of eternity.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. Now, another thing that struck me in Ecclesiastes was this idea of a never-ending cycle. You know how the preacher talks about generations coming and going, the sun rising and setting, the wind blowing, the rivers flowing.
Right.
It all seems so repetitive.
Yeah, it's like that feeling of being stuck on a hamster wheel, right?
Yeah.
Going through the same motions day after day.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't think Ecclesiastes is trying to make us feel hopeless or trapped.
Okay, so what's the message then?
I think it's about recognizing that these cycles are actually part of God's design for the world.
Okay.
There's a time for everything. Work and rest, joy and sorrow, planting and harvesting. It's a reminder that we're actually part of something much bigger than ourselves.
I'm starting to see how this could be comforting. Instead of resisting the natural flow of life, we can find some peace in knowing that, well, God's in control.
Precisely. It's about trusting in his timing and finding beauty in each season, even the challenging ones.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, I have to admit, one part of Ecclesiastes really threw me for a loop. It's where the preacher talks about how he sought wisdom and knowledge, but it only seemed to lead to more sorrow.
That is interesting, isn't it?
Why would seeking knowledge be a bad thing?
That's a great question, and I think it gets to the heart of what true wisdom really is. You see, the more we learn about the world, the more aware we become of its brokenness, its suffering, and the injustices.
Kind of like, like a doctor, for example.
Mm-hmm.
They understand the human body better than anyone.
Right.
But they also see all the ways it can go wrong.
Exactly. Knowledge can be a heavy burden, but I don't think Ecclesiastes is telling us to stay ignorant.
Okay.
It's about using our knowledge to make the world a better place, to ease suffering, to fight for justice.
So it's not knowledge itself that's bad, but what we do with it.
Precisely. True wisdom comes from applying our knowledge with compassion and using it to serve others.
Okay, that's a really helpful perspective. So we've talked about the fleeting nature of earthly things, the cyclical nature of life, and the potential pitfalls of knowledge.
Right.
Where do we go from here? What's the antidote to all this, vanity?
That's where things start to get really encouraging. In the midst of all this talk about the emptiness of worldly pursuits, Ecclesiastes actually points us to a source of true and lasting joy.
Okay, I'm definitely ready for some encouragement. So where does Ecclesiastes point us for this lasting joy?
Well, it's actually simpler than you might think.
Okay.
In chapter 2, the preacher says, "There is nothing better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that he should make his soul enjoy good in his labor." This also I saw, that it was from the hand of God.
Wait, so the key to a good life is just eating, drinking, and working. That sounds, I don't know, maybe a little too easy.
It's not about indulging in excess, you know.
Right.
It's about recognizing that the simple pleasures in life, like a good meal, a refreshing drink, even the satisfaction of a job well done, these are all gifts from God.
Okay.
You should savor them and be grateful for them.
So it's about finding joy in those everyday moments, not just chasing after the big accomplishments or material possessions.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a heart of gratitude and appreciating the blessings that God has given us.
I love that. It's such a good reminder to slow down, be present, and appreciate the little things.
Yeah, and that leads us to another beautiful passage in Ecclesiastes.
Okay.
It's Ecclesiastes 3.1-8, a time for everything verses. Have you read those before?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It talks about how there's a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to weep and a time to laugh.
Yeah, it's like a cosmic dance.
Yeah.
All these different seasons weaving together to create the tapestry of life.
Exactly. And the key takeaway here, I think, is this need for balance and acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
We can't force things to happen outside of their appointed time.
Right.
There's a season for everything, and wisdom lies in recognizing and embracing each season as it comes.
So instead of fighting against the natural order of things, we can find peace in surrendering to God's plan.
Precisely. It's about trusting in His timing and knowing that He has a purpose for every season, even the difficult ones.
Yeah, that's such a powerful reminder, especially when we're going through tough times. Now, as we kind of journey through Ecclesiastes, we come to a pretty pivotal verse. It's in chapter 12. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth.
Right.
This seems like, a pretty direct instruction.
Huh.
But what does it really mean to remember our Creator? Like, what does that look like practically?
I think it's more than just acknowledging that God exists. It's about living with this awareness of His presence in all seasons of life.
Right.
Making choices that honor Him, seeking His guidance,
Uh-huh.
and just letting our actions reflect our relationship with Him.
So it's about weaving our faith into the fabric of our everyday lives, not just keeping it tucked away in a corner.
Absolutely. It's about making God a part of every conversation, every decision, really every aspect of our being.
That's a beautiful challenge. It's about turning our lives into this living testimony of our love and devotion to Him. And ultimately, that leads us to the grand conclusion of Ecclesiastes, where it all comes together.
Yeah, it's in chapter 12, verses 13 and 14. The preacher sums it all up.
Okay.
He says, "Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep His commandments. For this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil."
So after exploring this, the fleeting nature of earthly things, the complexities of life, Ecclesiastes brings us back to the one thing that truly matters, our relationship with God.
It's this reminder that our actions actually have consequences, both in this life and in the life to come.
Yeah, that can sound a bit intimidating, but it's also incredibly motivating, don't you think?
Absolutely. It means that our lives have significance. Every choice we make matters. It all contributes to the tapestry of our lives and reflects our commitment to God.
So it's not about living in fear of judgment, but about recognizing that God is the ultimate judge.
Yeah.
And living in a way that pleases Him.
Precisely. It's about aligning our lives with His will and living with purpose.
This has been such an eye-opener.
Yeah.
This whole deep dive into Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
It's really challenged me to think differently about what it means to live a good life.
Uh-huh.
It seems like Ecclesiastes isn't just about doom and gloom,
Right.
but about finding true joy and meaning in a world that can often feel meaningless.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about discovering that true fulfillment doesn't come from chasing fleeting pleasures or even worldly success, but from a deep and abiding relationship with God.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about vanity, cycles, wisdom, finding joy in simple things, remembering our Creator, and fearing God.
Mm-hmm.
What's like the overarching message, the big takeaway from all of this?
If I had to sum it up in one sentence, I think I'd say that Ecclesiastes is an invitation to live a life of purpose and meaning by embracing our relationship with God and living in accordance with His will.
I love that. It's a good reminder that even in a world full of uncertainty and change, we can find stability and hope in God's unchanging love and wisdom.
Absolutely.
But before we wrap up, there's one more passage I want to touch on.
Okay.
It's in chapter 7, verses 1-6. It talks about how it's better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting.
That is an interesting one.
Why would anyone say that? Shouldn't we be seeking joy and celebration?
It's a curious passage, isn't it? It seems counterintuitive, but I think it speaks to the importance of introspection and confronting the realities of life, including death. The house of mourning, while it's a place of sorrow, it can also be a place of profound reflection and growth.
So it's not about wallowing in sadness, but about using those times of grief and loss to examine our lives, maybe reevaluate our priorities, and deepen our understanding of ourselves and our place in the world.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging the full spectrum of human experience and allowing those difficult emotions to refine us and lead us to a deeper appreciation for life.
That's such a profound insight. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's this opportunity for growth and transformation. I'm starting to see that Ecclesiastes isn't about avoiding sadness or hardship altogether.
Right, yeah, I agree.
It's more about facing those challenges with an open heart and allowing them to shape us.
Exactly. Embracing the full spectrum of human experience, both the highs and the lows.
Yeah.
And recognizing that even in the midst of sorrow, there can be growth and transformation.
So we've explored the fleeting nature of worldly things, the cyclical nature of life,
right?
The challenges and rewards of seeking knowledge, the beauty of finding joy in simple pleasures,
yes,
the importance of remembering our Creator,
right?
And, the call to live a life that honors God.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. So what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this deep dive into Ecclesiastes?
Yeah.
After we're done here.
That's a great question. I hope they discover that Ecclesiastes isn't really a book about despair or futility.
Okay.
But a book about hope and purpose. It's an invitation to live a life of meaning by deepening our relationship with God and aligning our lives with His will.
It's almost like the author saying, hey, I've chased all the things the world tells us to chase, and guess what? It all fades away. But there's something more, something bigger than all of this.
Exactly. And that's something more. It's a life lived in relationship with God.
Yeah.
It's about finding our true identity and purpose, in Him, not in the fleeting things of this world.
So for someone listening who might be feeling lost or disillusioned, maybe, what's the message of hope that Ecclesiastes offers? What would you tell them?
I would say there's always hope.
Okay.
Even in the midst of life's challenges and uncertainties,
Right.
There's a loving God who cares for us, who has a plan for our lives, and offers us true and lasting joy.
It's almost like those times when you're hiking through a really dense forest and you feel like you're totally lost.
Right.
And then suddenly you emerge into a clearing.
Yeah.
And you see the most breathtaking view.
It's like that.
Ecclesiastes is like that clearing. It helps us see beyond the immediate challenges and glimpse, the bigger picture, a life filled with meaning, purpose, and hope.
Beautifully put. And it reminds us that even when we can't see the path ahead, God is with us every step of the way.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Ecclesiastes, I want to leave our listeners with this. If everything under the sun is fleeting, as Ecclesiastes reminds us, then what truly matters in the grand scheme of eternity?
What truly matters is, how we live our lives in light of that reality. Do we chase after fleeting pleasures, worldly success? Or do we seek to live a life that honors God and makes a real difference in the world?
It's about shifting our focus from the temporal to the eternal, from the material to the spiritual, and from ourselves to others.
And it's about embracing the journey, with all its ups and downs, knowing that even in the midst of challenges, God is with us, guiding us, and working all things together for good.
That's a beautiful message to end on. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into Ecclesiastes. I really appreciate you sharing your insights.
It's been my pleasure.
And for you listening, I encourage you to keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep into that vast ocean of God's Word. You never know what treasures you might discover.